So I just played through Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask, and now I'm going to play the Wind Waker. And I'm loving the blue colours, the clarity of it. The technical standpoints of the game's visuals are already plain to see. And this is pretty neat, like kind of making a boat out of this lily pad and like powering ourselves with the Deku Leaf. The ocean theme is really good. I love the accompaniment. I think the main theme is actually a variation on the Hyrule Field theme from Ocarina of Time. It sounds really good. If you hookshot onto that without the iron boots, then it doesn't work. But if you put on the iron boots, hookshot it, it drags it towards you instead, and it tumbles over and crumbles. And then you get a joy pendant for some reason, but I guess the real reward is that you get to free Makar. Just another hand in a Zelda game that's really creepy. It's kind of finicky and you don't want to be taken away underneath. It's pretty nice that they put this here just to catch our attention. It's something that we'll have to leave until later on. And then the dungeon opens up more, becomes a lot more kind of elaborate with its multi-floor design, you know, like a really big room, kind of looking more like the water temple in Ocarina of Time almost. It's a pretty nice arena for a boss battle, with all of the water cascading down. Looks pretty nice, and the boss battle music is really good too. It's pretty neat how you can like chop it in half, starts running away and stuff. They are really annoying enemies, so to be able to squash them is pretty nice. The way they blink when they're flattened is also pretty nice too. I love that animation where he defends his back by holding the blades behind him, and the way he spins in the air and everything. The music is really important. I didn't actually mention the music when I arrived on Dragon Roost Island, but the tune is really fantastic. Once you've completed the dungeon, you hear the piece again, and it kind of feels triumphant. Okay, so everything's black and white except for Link and the King of Red Lions. It's like that scene in Schindler's List with the girl in the red hood. And this is the music from A Link to the Past. It's quite a nice reveal that the King of Red Lions turns out to be the King of Hyrule. Actually a better surprise than Tetra turning out to be Princess Zelda. I mean, that's something we knew already. It wasn't trying to keep it that much of a secret. And the visuals here are pretty nice. All the swirls of smoke and everything, and the insect-like body of the creature. Kind of cool how we drop a curled enemy onto a switch, keeping it down so that we can access the treasure chest. I mean, very similar to just placing a box down on the switch, but instead using an enemy. And I do love how he gets stabbed in the head. And the way he's still alive when the sword is deep within his forehead. And he even talks and laughs while it's there. But it's kind of cool how they're all motionless, they're kind of stuck in time, and the soundtrack sounds weird, like things are far off in the distance. And the sped up animation is pretty good on the BMOS, it does make it a bit trickier. There is one part here that I really like. It's so stupid, but like Link is smiling here, or Tetra is waking up and Link is looking at her. He's all cool and everything. He's kind of leaning back on the boat and Link is just so happy, like staring at her. And then suddenly the stone goes off and he gets a start. Link, what are you doing? And this is the title theme of the game. It's a really good piece. Already a more interesting aesthetic. Kind of looks like a chessboard or something like that. You get a sense of this dungeon coming alive. But it is quite cool how it's all black and white and then it goes into colour. Maybe quite intimidating for a lot of people to go back up here and fight all of these enemies. I love this cutscene where he just slaps her in the face. I still really think that the graphics technically are very nice. Like even the look on the hearts that you pick up and stuff. There's a nice sheen to all of the objects. I keep forgetting that the king is actually the King of Red Lions. It kind of makes it sadder. It's less sad looking at the actual King of Hyrule in his human form. It's more sad looking at the boat, which I don't think the game does much in these end credits. And here is actually a shot of the King of Red Lions completely motionless. It's very easy to miss that actually and forget that the King of Red Lions is the King of Hyrule who's dead now. He drowned, but he's still being used as a boat. Maybe this is something new that it does with the idea. It's kind of similar to torching cobwebs in Ocarina of Time, just to access lower areas of the dungeon. But it's pretty neat how you can torch the ropes on this bridge to make it fall down. Might not be immediately obvious that you have to like stay on the bridge to make it crumble. And this is leading to one of the best pieces of music in the whole Zelda series, really. The music with Grandma. Yep, really nice music. I guess this is a bit of expressiveness in the game through the music. I mean, maybe you can feel a bit sorry for Grandma that Ariel has been kidnapped and everything. Wow, that's a decrepit old shield. Are you sure you can still use that thing? Are you going to get splinters and cry? It's kind of nice that Tetra cuts into the treacle a bit like that. Just decrepit old shield. Our crying grandmother just gave it to us. Are you sure you shouldn't just quit right now? Seriously, think about it. You're just going to get more sentimental from here on out. And it plays the gong once more. I mean, that's pretty funny. It is a little bit trickier to hit Ganondorf than other enemies. I guess you got to press forward while doing it. And now I can head out. So yeah, being pushed along to the east by a westerly wind. And we'll be seeing this a lot while playing the game. Or at least I will. And well, the wind isn't. But I just want to see her kind of tumble. Okay, that didn't exactly work. Let's try once more. It is pretty funny just how serious she is, and we just like failed it deliberately. And she's just like polite about it. It was an idea that was in the N64 Zelda games, just very briefly, and now the Wind Waker is using it too, but making like a big thing of it, with the wind changing direction and everything. It's pretty nice being able to control a seagull and to fly around. One new idea with the boomerang is that you can select multiple targets that it hits in a chain. Looks quite impressive, and it's impressive how the graphics are keeping up with all of this. There's a pretty cool moment here where you use a grappling hook on this bell. Link's face is pretty funny sometimes. This enemy kind of like fell off. Does it usually do that? Like, I just came across it hanging off the edge. Again, I really like how smooth it all looks. The visuals are very clear. It's not so low res like on the N64. The cel shaded aesthetic with the fire, it's kind of swirling along. That is pretty nice. And the smoke effects too. I forgot to mention that about the bombs in the game, that the bombs explode in a swirl of smoke. And also the distortion of the visuals, you can get a sense of the heat in the place. The music of Outset Island is actually the Kokiri Forest music, but given a different kind of variation. It's actually probably my favourite variation on the theme. I think I prefer this one over the version in Ocarina of Time. It's a bit more mellow, very calm, but at the same time very sprightly, very homely, and kind of whimsical. Maybe a little lukewarm, but that's okay, it's just the beginning of the game. Yeah, really nice visuals, just really clear and smooth and everything. I kind of feel like the Windfall Island theme is a mix of both Kakariko Village and maybe the Hyrule Marketplace. It's almost as though the Kakariko Village theme has been given that kind of lively, sprightly merchant feeling of the Hyrule Market. It sounds really good. There's not actually that much to it. It's quite a short piece, just played again and again, but I never get tired of it, and it always sounds nice. It has a really good feel to it. You know, this requires a bit of figuring out actually. Got to think, oh yeah, there was that place before. So it hasn't led us back to wherever. There was that statue that we're meant to break apart by playing that song. The exterior of this place, I guess, is the exterior of the dungeon. If you look up, you might notice things that are a part of the dungeon when you go outside of it. There isn't much that you can see, but I guess that is the idea. It is pretty nice how we go outside of the dungeon. It's kind of like in A Link to the Past. There were dungeons where you could go outside of it as well as going through inside it. And it fits in neatly to the structure of this place, that it's one large volcano popping out of the water, and we're progressively going higher up the dungeon, finding ourselves closer to the top of it where the dragon is. But I don't mind the grappling hook. I don't think it's amazing. It's something that's pretty cool, but not like an amazing highlight or anything like that. It's just a fairly cool item to have. I like the design on the fairy. Instead of just being a ball of light, they are actually a proper kind of shrunk humanoid kind of figure, and it kind of looks funny with that unhappy face on the fairy. Pretty nice animation here every time you redirect the wind. Link's hat gets swept up in the wind. And these Deku Baba, I do like their visuals. I think they've got like a fuller body with these cel shaded graphics, and I think their animation is a bit smoother as well, and also the sound is better. And if anything, it's actually made easier, especially with their very clear animation. Not that they should have been particularly difficult really. And here's the Octorok again, but also with another upgrade to the visual design, just having a sleeker kind of fuller body and everything, not looking as flimsy as it did on the N64. The Deku Leaf is pretty cool actually, it's a nice item to have. Actually it works a lot like Deku Link's ability, or at least these launch pads are straight out of Majora's Mask. But it's definitely a nice item to have, and I guess it's just whether or not the game can think up ideas that use the mechanics differently. I think, you know, it's pretty funny if like one of them hits the other. If they go to attack, it hits its friend and then it looks at him with a surprised expression. It's kind of a nice additional animation. Just took out its friend. I like that that can happen. The music's pretty nice. I like the use of the didgeridoo. And this music is quite enticing. Just this standstill kind of theme. Like so odd. That's pretty nice. Rather than having to like sidle or sidle through that place, easily breezing past it with the dungeon items we've collected. Nice animation with all the feathers and swirling around. Yeah, and it crashes into that wall. And it crashed into the wall again. I kind of like this. It's a nice shock. And the fact that Makar is imprisoned. It's kind of a nice twist. Maybe the nicest thing about it is that we can just go through the dungeon on our own and not have to play the command melody again. I like the sound of water drops as it begins to rain. It is pretty nice how Zelda accompanies us in this battle, rather than just being relegated to the side. Well, there's an interesting constellation there. Is that a hook? Or is it like, I don't know, the lens of truth or something? Or maybe it's just a pan. Just giving the sense of motion. Whoa, Jesus Christ. So that enemy actually got killed by something that was going on in the dungeon. I've never seen that happen before, but that is pretty neat. That enemies can actually end up killing themselves if they don't step through it carefully. So it's the Great Fairy theme again, but with the addition of wave sound effects, which I think is a nice touch, really immersing us into the world of this ocean. I like that there's music every time you hit them. It's pretty funny if they come right up to you, kind of sniff at you and everything, maybe even clipping through the barrel. A spear is going right through. I like the animations on Link's face. The funny thing about this is that you can actually go behind here and get a rupee that's here. I always thought that that was out of bounds until I saw Link as 7 playing that part. So this is an entirely new enemy. Quite an interesting kind of creature. A bit precarious how we're on this spot. I guess we can't use the A button here, otherwise we'll go spinning off of this platform and into the lava. It looks like quite a creepy insect-like creature, but again it's very simple. You just press A at the right moment or you attack its eye. I like the general sounds in the Wind Waker, like Child Link's grunts and cries, and all of the sounds of like things being targeted, the sound of the rope, just the general sound effects. I think it's pretty good. And thank God we don't have a Deku shield that can burn if we touch fire. I like that face on the side of the boat, like a very stern expression. He's very serious about his products, the scourge of the sea. And yeah, Beedle is a very whimsical character, kind of nice. The music is really good. I think Beedle's music is every bit as good as the shop music in Ocarina of Time. But the thing that makes Beedle so great is his sound effects. It's just lovable and cutesy in a kind of weird way. It's satisfying to hear him say these things. I like the music. The music's quite mellow. Maybe this is something new, getting a pot of water and throwing it on to create some kind of stepping stone. It's a bit like using the ice arrows in the Great Bay Temple in Majora's Mask, but kind of a bit less cool because using an ice arrow in Majora's Mask is just a bit more sensational, I think. It's kind of neat how the boss feels like a Deku Baba actually. It's like an advanced Deku Baba, and it comprises of those claws that we saw from earlier in the dungeon and fits in with the general aesthetic of the dungeon overall. It's like Michael Jackson. I mean, is he supposed to be Elvis Presley or Michael Jackson? We return to this place and we're a lot more powered up than we were before. I think that's the appeal of this. This is a lot more exciting than I remembered it. Like, a lot of this stuff didn't happen. Like, I never took damage during this sequence in previous playthroughs. It is pretty funny with the Bokoblin enemies just dying like that. The skull kind of lights up and animates, and Link's face kind of changes. Link's face kind of blinks and his mouth opens. Now, I won't go saying this in a very loud voice, but while she may look young, Miss Tetra's actually 35. What? That's the same age as Tingle. Oh, that's a joke, Shrimpy, okay. I suppose it was just chance that we lost our last Miss when Miss Tetra was still young. So there was a previous kind of captain or miss who died. It's a nice touch. You little weasel. Well, thank you so much for coming into my home and breaking my high-priced vases. Do you think you could just break someone's vases and leave without paying for them? What's this nonsense? Why, this is ridiculous. You don't have enough money. Be on your way. That is pretty fun. It's a nice detail. Link, Ariel, don't go, don't leave. Oh, don't leave your poor old grandma. And if we pour a fairy onto her... I love this sound effect. And this is actually one of the funniest sound effects in the game. If you talk to this guy... And I love that. Might as well get taken out by a rat now. Right next to the King of Red Lions. I'm sure it'll be a relief to a lot of Zelda players that the Wind Waker features a save system similar to Ocarina of Time rather than Majora's Mask. Being able to break this woman's jars is a nice touch. Just cutting into the treacle. It's so idealistic about her saying that her sister is trying to help her or help her grandmother or something, and yet you try to destroy the jars. It's almost as though at this point the biggest menace of this island is Link himself. Like, he breaks all of these cups and plates, a jug too. It's pretty nice adding stuff like that. It's not amazing, but it's just a nice little addition. Just something you can do if you want. This woman's got a jar again. You know what I'd do if trouble came my way? I'd throw rocks to fight it off. You could handle that, couldn't you? Yeah, I'm definitely good at throwing rocks. She seems to be absolutely fine with us kind of tormenting her. I like this statue head. It's very mysterious. It's going to kind of catch your attention. Oh, you can press R to grab. That's pretty good. It's a nice funny little slow nod at the end there. Quite nice music there. Simple storyboard kind of style. Simple generic story of like Zelda games in the past, I guess. It's pretty nice with these wooden bridges actually. You can snap the ropes with your sword, maybe accidentally, but not too dangerous really. It's not going to be that dangerous. I guess that is a new use for the iron boots. That it has this spring mechanism, but I mean it's not that amazing. Maybe this is one of the more challenging rooms, I'm not sure. Like, I think I do actually remember getting stuck in this place, but the answer is actually pretty obvious, using the Deku Leaf. It doesn't necessarily seem like you can actually make it. Oh, and he won't leave. And the funny thing, he was actually in prison. Like, what was he in prison for? Why are there skulls here, though? It kind of implies that a lot of other prisoners came here and died and decomposed over a really long time. But then, if it was Tingle who made this hole, then maybe other prisoners were with Tingle while he was imprisoned, and he led them into here, then something horrible happened? I guess there is some kind of schedule in Windfall Island. There's no time cycle like there is in Majora's Mask, but some characters move through the island in a certain kind of way, and it always resets whenever you come back into the outside area. Like with this guy, he makes his journey towards the post box, and some other guy goes for a run around too. Like, I'm feeling down right now, so shove off, will you? Drop out and get elsewhere. I kind of like that they all have this sailing language. It just gives it that touch that they're all kind of used to the pirate lifestyle in a way, or just living by sea. Could we buy, 10,000 rupees? Come on now, how's a kid like you going to pay for these? You're dreaming. How about you just think of it as a payback for the nasty little monopoly you've been running? It is quite a nice atmosphere here with this pirate ship on Windfall Island. And it's pretty neat with that bomb shop, the guy who had a monopoly kind of paying for it. They're affordable now. It's pretty neat that you can teleport in between places inside the dungeon, although the dungeon is so easy that you don't really need to. I do like that we've got a bigger wallet to begin with. It's kind of annoying how we could only collect up to 99 rupees on the N64 to begin with. Oh yeah, okay, and so there's this place. I mean, there's the boss door, maybe getting us a bit excited about what we're going to be fighting against. Somewhat of an interesting look on the door, I guess. It's just like cartoony, wacky nonsense really, but at least it's quite minimal about it. Like, I don't think these cutscenes last too long. I really hated it how in Twilight Princess they would extend the cutscenes, and now we get to go into Tetra's or Zelda's bedroom, and this straight out of the cutscene, a shot of Link right next to her bed. It's kind of telling, isn't it? She kind of looks aside when she's on her bed and looks at that. A lamp that kind of looks like the boss from the second dungeon. Who's that? Maybe she's Tetra's mother. She kind of looks like a Gerudo. And despite the fact that she's this tomboy, like a ferocious, boisterous acting female pirate, she does still have perfume and jewellery, maybe kind of indicating the side of her being like Princess Zelda. We get a rather amusing cutscene. It blows up right in Link's face. Now we can maybe throw a rock at this guy's face. And just what do you mean by that? Just be quiet for a moment and I'll tell you. Now oh yeah, the pig is like a small little pig. This is the same pig that's going to be like later on in the game. So it's a similar kind of thing that you can do with chickens, I think, or at least that dog in Majora's Mask. You can kind of capture it and then throw it into the sea and then it swims back onto land and everything. It's pretty nice that you can skip through the text. I think this might be it already. I could imagine some people getting stuck in this place if they're not sure as to what to do exactly and just like finding a way around. And it is pretty intimidating with the moblins. And again, another very silly cutscene. And it's pretty amusing, I guess, but so silly. We pirates do this all the time. Don't worry about it. It'll be a piece of cake. Like, I don't mind it at all. It's just a daft sequence. But there's not too much praise you can throw at it, really. Welcome to the Island Postal Service. And so it's just like Majora's Mask. It has its own postal service. I don't know if there's anything more that they do with this actually. Can't really think of anything amazing that they did with it. And there's this Siddle animation. Is it Siddle or Sidle? I've got to kind of like control the camera stick with my mouth to... And then again, I guess it's something kind of new to this game. Just like going along a wall like that. The Tingle Tuner. My younger brother actually had a Game Boy Advance and got the thing that you can use to connect it to the GameCube. And there was actually one time I played it with him. He was playing the Wind Waker and I was controlling the Game Boy Advance. And there's this funny thing you can do where you can press A and Tingle kind of calls out like wherever you were located on the Game Boy Advance. And it was pretty funny. I just did it again and again, just pressing A. Like my brother was trying to play the game and I was just interrupting it all the time. There's that Elvis Presley guy. I mean, not really a clever design by any means, but just something really silly that they threw in there. What, are you trying to say that you can calm value down? Psh, that's just a big fat lie. And this environment is looking so bare. Maybe there were similar kind of spots in other games that looked just as bare, but there's no decoration here whatsoever. Maybe there was some inside this boy's room. The door actually looks a bit distinctive actually. It almost looks like teeth. I don't know what that's supposed to be. I mean, the top of it kind of looks like a bird's face with a beak, but then the diamond shapes look like teeth somehow. Looks really weird. I guess there's some kind of straw or feather made kind of design around it. I love how the fire creates that distortion above it. It's not as pronounced as in Majora's Mask, but I guess if you do complete a dungeon, some things open up or some side content opens up. So there's this guy over here who you can speak to. I've done it once before in a different playthrough. It's not the most amazing bit of side content. Nothing amazing really. Yeah, it's pretty nice atmosphere though, some interesting visuals, and the music is really nice. Obviously it didn't come up with this theme, this is just the theme from A Link to the Past, but quite a nice variation nonetheless. But you got to praise the games that actually come up with their own original tracks. Flies straight towards us. Hoy, you there, you kingly red lion guy. That's it, I've repaid my debt. I'm done. You take care of the rest. Kind of odd thing to say. It's got some kind of backstory about maybe the red lion kind of saved his life or something. I don't know. I suppose the Amos Knight play out differently, but it's such a time-old idea. Putting bombs into their mouths, making them explode. And again, it looks so buffoonish. It's kind of nice that that pillar fell down, but it gave us a heart. Oh, I like this creature. I mean, at least the visual design of it. I mean, it's not a difficult enemy by any means. You just shoot it with a bow and arrow. It's so precise, the bow and arrow, with this Z targeting. It's no challenge whatsoever, which is pretty disappointing. But at least its visual design is pretty impressive. Your true trial will begin. Oh, is this the sequence where we go below the sea? It is a pretty cool sequence. Again, like nothing in the way of major gameplay or anything like that. It's not like one of those times such as when you go into the Dark World in A Link to the Past, or where you become an adult and go 7 years into the future in Ocarina of Time. It's just a bunch of cutscenes basically, and maybe one battle with some enemies we've already faced. There's some neat visual effects, like with the way that it's all black and white and the enemies are frozen and then it all reanimates and we get to see some stained glass windows of sages from Ocarina of Time. But yeah, it's all a bit just, I mean, it's all just visuals really. It seemed as though the game was heading in a direction that was more creative, but it's unfortunate that it's just a brief sequence that doesn't really have any kind of ramifications. Got light arrows. I know that light arrows are very powerful against these enemies. Let the winds of Cyclos' wrath blow you away. No, I'm gonna shoot in the face. So I think this is the first of the Re-Dead in this game, and it is a pretty nice sound effect. It's pretty neat how terrifying that sound effect is, but it's so easy to dispatch, like really easy. They were quite finicky on the N64, and it really made it quite panicky. And so this was the part of the game that I got stuck on the most. We're supposed to find Makar, and you can go to Forest Haven, but I found it really hard to find him. I'm not going to go there now because I want to see if there'll be anything that would indicate what you have to do inside Forest Haven. As for Makar, he is somewhere here in the Forest Haven, but I do not know where. Outside, perhaps. You should be able to hear his music when you are near to him. Okay, well that is a good enough clue, I think. So I did get stuck, but maybe I was just being absent-minded or something, I don't know. So I don't really blame it that much. Just a little hiccup on my part. And then watering the bomb plant is kind of like the mechanic with the bean in Majora's Mask, but instead with bomb flowers. The whole idea of bomb flowers, of course, is from Ocarina of Time. It's still pretty nice, but it's definitely not something completely new. And then throwing that bomb down that ledge and onto that boulder below is of course like their entrance to Dodongo's cavern. And just more bomb puzzles, exactly like you got in Dodongo's cavern. Again, this is very identical to burning cobwebs, just instead we're burning wood. Maybe there's some degree of non-linearity about which Triforce shards you collect first too. Or maybe you can start the Triforce shards before you do the temples. Doesn't really feel like a great choice. I think I do remember getting stuck on this room a little bit when I played it for the first time. I mean, all it involves is bringing out the dungeon map and looking at where you haven't been before. So it's really not that difficult, but it's almost a touch of the kind of non-linear structure where you're not obviously kind of prodded along in a certain direction. I can't really give it that much praise, but it just feels a bit more sophisticated than other dungeons. It looks good. The graphics are good. They're very smooth, but that to me isn't really something that creates such a great highlight. Really, it is the clever ideas, the very clever, sensational, awe-inspiring moments of game design that really make a difference. Crescent Moon Island, Cookie Cutter Islands. Auctions may be raised to see who can bid you. Yeah, I've already done this. When can I play that minigame where I get to shoot you? And this is just like so much like a pantomime, really. The kind of thing that's so bad that it's good for a lot of people, I guess. Not the most interesting of environments, like looking very idyllic, like a typical kind of beginner level where everything's like paradise, everything's just very simple and primary. Just hope that later levels are filled with a bit more character and distinction. It doesn't have to be like that. Like Clocktown is where you start off in Majora's Mask, and that was filled with a lot of character, a lot of different things were going on, especially on the later days. You know, the music gets quite intense, whereas on Outside Island it's a bit of a step back. I know that with a new console, you're bound to have new people introducing themselves to the Zelda series, unlike where most people playing Majora's Mask probably would have already played Ocarina of Time. Like, a big shame for those who have played Ocarina of Time, as well as A Link to the Past and Majora's Mask, coming into the Wind Waker, you know, having to deal with all of these tutorials again and a lot of deja vu. It is a bit disappointing. See, this is exactly like Ocarina of Time with the fire and everything, although he's not riding his horse. I guess in the Wind Waker they didn't make horses because they wouldn't need them. So they just had him standing there instead. And so this is perhaps more explicitly the Kokiri Forest theme used again. Farore's Pearl, the Great Deku Tree, all of these things are being repeated. The Wind Waker first actually came out with a copy of Ocarina of Time Master Quest, so the fact that all of these things are repeated just becomes all the more noticeable because of that. Oh, yeah, the Forbidden Woods, the dungeon, yeah, sure. It's a vile place, home to vile beasts. Makar has got trapped there like Ruto and Lord Jabu Jabu or the Medley Girl. We know the deal. It's pretty rote by this point. Pretty straightforward and by the numbers. The game really is pretty generous with all of its hearts and rupees and like giving you this jewel that's packed with all of these different things that you can pick up and heal yourself with. So I always found it really weird that if you place this bomb into this water, it explodes for some reason. I would have thought that the water would quench the bomb, that it wouldn't explode inside it. It's almost as though the water is extremely flammable. It's kind of a weird error in detail. What about the sea? Yeah, it explodes there too. It's really weird. Is it really set as hold by default? That's kind of horrible. She said she wanted to learn to carry jars on her head, like me, so she could help your grandma with chores. This is so kind of idealistic, isn't it? This kid with snot hanging out of his nose. It's a bit crude, isn't it? It looks like something straight out of a cartoon for 5-year-old children, I gotta say. You know, maybe the same kind of art style you'd expect from Lazy Town or something. I know that's not a cartoon, but it has this kind of brightly coloured, silly kind of look. So this is the first moblin. Oh no, wait, it's not the first moblin because we snuck past them into the Forsaken Fortress. But this is the first time we fight them, and it's pretty easy, like really, really easy. I guess you got to like pay attention to the fact that they might punch you in the head. This is quite a neat use of the boomerang. Actually, I think Twilight Princess did a better job with the boomerang. The way that you have to like chain hits, and it's made into a proper puzzle. Not the best of puzzles, but still more of a proper puzzle than this. But obviously this is very much like Baronade, just have to cut these strands off of the boss. It looks very colourful and pretty, but gameplay wise it's just not too new. I do like that the bosses all have their own unique theme. That's a nice kind of improvement. And that's it. I mean, there was no second stage, which was a bit disappointing. You just have to cut those ribbons, avoid taking damage from those stringy things or whatever, and then just keep on hitting it. It's alright, but nothing really amazing, not like a really standout moment. Letters for Link, we have one letter. Here is your letter. If you're reading this letter, it can only mean you have peeked into one of our many post boxes. Kamali's father. A piece of heart for that? What? We didn't do anything. If only they worked on this game for another year, and if the disc could fit more content. Imagine the kind of islands they might have come up with. Just go right past all of these enemies. They don't seem like the kind of fun enemies you actually want to interact with in any kind of way. Tell me, small fry, have you ever caught a fairy before? Yes, I have, yeah. Tower of the Gods. It's kind of looking like a water temple, but it's not really. You don't go inside the water at all. There's so much water in this game, obviously, but you never actually go inside it. It's just another thing that this game doesn't do, whereas other Zelda games do it. It's like another dimension, like a possible avenue for gameplay that it doesn't explore. It barely does anything with water. Like the extent to which water becomes a mechanic is basically in this room, where water raises and lowers just slightly and temporarily. I don't know if it's any kind of like proper puzzle. Just means you gotta wait a lot. Just like very slowly go through this place. The music is a bit generic, I think. I suppose it's meant to be like the music in the Temple of Time in Ocarina of Time, in that it contains male vocals. It's not using the Song of Time, I don't think. Maybe it is actually, but I don't think it is. But it sounds like really kind of kiddie in a way. It sounds like the Rugrats soundtrack with the kind of erring from like a chorus or something. So now we've got the bow, so let's see what they can make of it. Can they come up with puzzles that are really inventive? But I'm guessing this is all to do with Ocarina of Time, the hero of time. But I don't like the fact that it's looking back. It should be coming up with its own ideas, rather than just like bringing back stuff from previous games so much. I know that Zelda is generally regarded as a series that has a long history, and that it likes paying tributes and nods to previous games and everything. But I do prefer it when it comes up with its own material, like very unique, original designs. So it's a bit of a shame that here it's just so kind of entrenched in the past, like trying to suggest some kind of special feeling by referencing Ocarina of Time, as though acknowledging that Ocarina of Time was such a legendary game, but I prefer it to be its own thing, really. It is none other than the Master Sword, the Blade of Evil's Bane, so doing all of this yet again. Oh, it didn't let us press A to pick it up ourselves. Went straight to a cutscene. this musical piece. I don't know about you, but it doesn't really feel special at all. No going forward 7 years, no like opening up a new part of the overworld or anything like that. Just get the Master Sword and that's it. Just get a new sword. And does the sword actually feel different? I don't know if it does. I think it is meant to be more powerful, but I don't actually know if it actually is any different from the sword we had before. I mean, we're in the thick of the game now. We've got past the Tower of the Gods, we've got the Master Sword, Tetra turned out to be Princess Zelda. We're doing the last 2 main dungeons in the game, and look at it. It looks exactly the same. Like nothing feels different really. I mean, in terms of the visuals of this place, I think this large room helps it become something more distinctive and memorable. I'm still not really getting that much of a theme though. It doesn't seem all that different from the Forbidden Woods, and it still does look a bit different, but it's all based around plant life from the looks of it. It's not bad. It's the Wind Temple, and it does make use of wind-based mechanics, but it's not enough. It doesn't really strike out at me with any particular theme. Oh yeah, and Phantom Ganon. So Phantom Ganon is repeated in this. And it's basically just the Dead Man's Folly repeated all over again. I mean, you know, as soon as he sends that orb, you should know what to do. And it's quite a bit easier too. And yeah, there's nothing new to it. It is basically just the Dead Man's Folly and that's it. I'm not sure if you did it in Majora's Mask at all, but in the Wind Waker, definitely you do it again. Everything that's happened to you and your poor sister, it's all been my fault. Again, shades of Ocarina of Time, a feeling regretful about having put Link through such a dangerous quest. Just sealing her away, just conveniently tucking her away so we don't have to worry about her. This shows what might have been. Maybe we would have been able to explore this land, a grassy land of Hyrule beneath the ocean. Definitely it wouldn't have been as big as the Great Sea, but it might still have been a very sizable area. Looking at concept art for the Wind Waker contained inside the Hyrule Historia, it strongly indicates that there was meant to be a land beneath the ocean that we could have explored. And just imagine the possibilities. But more importantly, it might have contained more dungeons, and possibly the more creative dungeons, with the more out there designs, the more intimidating kind of ferocious atmosphere, and very clever level designs. But it was never to be, because I don't think the disc could store it. If they wanted to contain the end credits, such as they've got, they just couldn't fit everything onto the disc. And so they didn't work on the game any longer, and they just rushed it out in 2002 for the GameCube. I don't know for sure if that's actually the case, but it really does feel like it. I mean, of course we do go along a road towards Ganon's castle over there, but it's not really that much. Just a very simple pathway with all of the same enemies we've already faced. But elsewhere there could have been something very significant. I mean, we eventually got later Zelda games. We got Breath of the Wild, which definitely was something special. But still, I just wonder what they would have done with a Wind Waker 2. Does only the accompaniment play if you're idle? Like if you're still, does it not actually play the main tune? It just plays the accompaniment. I didn't think it was dynamic in that way. It's not quite the same though. You know, in Ocarina of Time, a lot of music was made for the Hyrule Field theme. Like lots of different pieces, each with their own kind of emotion. Like if you were stood still, it would sound more nostalgic and conveying the sense of the sun setting and playing all of the themes in a more somber kind of way. If you were journeying ahead, it would sound a lot more adventurous and play all of the themes in all of their glory. But if you were battling enemies, it would become dissonant and action-packed and sounding as if there's danger nearby, and so it kind of changed more dynamically, just the music changing more subtly to suit the mood. In the Wind Waker's Great Ocean, if an enemy comes along, it really disrupts the theme. It's quite abrupt how it changes into the enemy music. There's not as much of a transition. So that's just another detail that isn't as well worked upon in this game. It's not huge, it's just showing the difference between the two, the level of perfection and the quality and execution in Ocarina of Time, and then elements falling a bit short of that in the Wind Waker. Could they have actually set up the Wind Waker like Breath of the Wild? Maybe they could have just given us a boat early on and then we could just set sail and just explore the place. But I guess they would have had to give us a lot of items early on. If there was to be a large degree of non-linearity, yeah, it would have to take all of that into account, I think. So instead they just made it like Ocarina of Time, just repeated that rather than coming up with something new. You get a boomerang again, you get the arrows again, the fire and ice arrows, you get bombs again, you get a hammer again. Like Majora's Mask didn't bother with the hammer again. Or maybe Goron Link had the ability to kind of stomp the ground like a hammer. Either the hook shot or the mirror shield, and both of those were obviously in Ocarina of Time. Or the iron boots, that's another thing. How many songs were in Ocarina of Time? Yet here I think you just get 6 songs. It's not so bad, but it's just another thing indicating how short this game is. But this was 2002, so it is somewhat impressive. Well, yeah, I mean, it's not impressive really, is it? I mean, not that interesting, but it was something. Like this kind of forced moral lesson or whatever. It's not even worthy of a TV show like Arthur. I'm pretty sure that Arthur deals with moral lessons that are a bit more complicated than that and not so oversimplified. I do like how mysterious the rock heads look. Is there any big payoff though? Not really. You just pick them up and throw them and crumble them. It's not like, it indicates a new race of people or indicate the aesthetic of a dungeon or anything. The whole of this dungeon is based around the idea of the mirror shield and reflecting light. It doesn't actually do that much more new with it, that Ocarina of Time didn't already do. I mean, maybe this is new. The fact that you direct Medley to control the light. It's a shame we don't have the magnesis ability. That's the kind of thing that would speed these puzzles up. But again, it wasn't until Breath of the Wild that we'd actually get something like that. The kind of game that would actually bring about strides to gameplay. Spawned right next to me. And again, it's a bit daft. Yep, so that's straight out of Majora's Mask, and if anything it was like a lot easier. Just no sense of challenge about it. I think, it was done pretty simply in Majora's Mask, but at least it was a touch more challenging than that. Maybe not by much, but here it's just ridiculously easy. And so now we get the dungeon's item, and what is it? Is it a brand new item we've never seen before? No, it's the hook shot. So now we make our way back up using the long shot. Just again and again and again. I gotta say about the hook shot generally, like we already had the grappling hook. I kind of feel as though the grappling hook was meant to be the Wind Waker's version of the hook shot, but then we do actually get a hook shot anyway. You can actually go into this blue bulb thing. I've never been into this place before. It's completely new to me. And what is it? What does it turn out to be? A great new area? Something really interesting? What, so this is it? I don't know why, like the Wind Waker just feels like a game that people give a free pass. Yeah, and this is quite... But child, that land will not be Hyrule. It will be your land. The camera doesn't seem to be turning right around when I Z target. Or maybe Link isn't turning around as much as I'm used to, like compared to Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask. It's quite hard to turn him right the way around. Jeez, I'm really having a hard time turning Link around like I want him to. Yeah, I am feeling like the controls are loose. You need to hold it down more or something, or just take your time more kind of jumping. It's not as though the controls in the Wind Waker are perfect. I mean, they have made an attempt to try and smoothen out the experience and, give tweaks and refinements to the controls. But if anything, I'm struggling just as much as I might have done in Ocarina of Time or Majora's Mask. And I think this is the introduction just to the level of wackiness in this game. The bird looks around at the pirate ship. They fire one last rock, and then it smacks it right in the face. This giant intimidating bird suddenly just made to look so kind of stupid and cartoonish. I'm gonna say I don't like the design on the dragon. Again, it's a bit too whimsical. It almost looks like that Pokemon dragon, whatever it's called, Dragonite I think. It just looks a bit too wacky basically, like a silly looking dragon, not something ferocious and more distinctive like the Chinese style dragon Volvagia in Ocarina of Time. The name Zephos, I'm the god of winds, and then there are these creatures that are just like really dumb basically, like this big frog-like creature on a cloud. I mean, is the game not seeming like something for 5-year-old children yet? And this is another cutscene with the lazy animation. I mean, I know it's meant to look like a cartoon for really young children and everything, but there's nothing impressive about it. That's the point. Maybe some people like it because it's so bad, but it's not impressive. I feel like they can do a lot better than that, because usually the game design in the Zelda series is pretty good, and I wish that the story and the presentation would reflect that, rather than kind of play out in spite of it. I mean, it's so hokey, isn't it? It's so hokey. It just contains none of the power of the Master Sword moment from Ocarina of Time. I mean, there's another moment later on that's literally the Master Sword moment, I guess. That is more special. But still, this should be something special. Yet it's just so overblown and silly and absurd and wacky and stupid. Like, the music is just so... It's a farce. It's literally a farce. People were complaining in early screenshots about how the Wind Waker was looking like a game for 5-year-old children. It is. In these moments, it definitely... That is definitely what it looks like. It's so stupid. He just did some kind of backstep. And this is like the really stupid part of the cutscene. I mean, Ganondorf is meant to like seem all powerful at the moment, like at his best. He's regained his magic. He's meant to seem really intimidating, and then this happens. He just gets swiped by those birds, by the Rito people, and then this cartoonish, buffoonish dragon comes along and burns the whole place down. And the stupid soundtrack, those yells by that chorus, the vocals, it's just lazy. That's all it is. And then we meet this boy silly young character who hasn't grown up properly. There really isn't much to it. It's kind of forgettable. And the Rito girl, I've forgotten her name, I think it's Medley. She doesn't really have a lot to her character either. She's kind of just like this standard, idealistic kind of girl. A little bit of a fetch quest here, just passing items between people. And there really isn't that much distinction to it, not that much flavour to it. We're just handing around letters. It's not like playing a song to Darunia where he gives us a little dance and everything. It really is just like passing these letters around that they probably could have passed around to each other anyway without Link. That's one thing that I think is bad about the introduction to the Wind Waker compared to Ocarina of Time. In Ocarina of Time there were tutorials and stuff, but you could just skip them. Like you could talk to the Kokiri children if you wanted to, but if you've already played the game before you probably don't want to, and you don't need to. You can just collect the sword and the shield and go straight to the first dungeon. But in the Wind Waker you're actually required to do that tutorial, so it just slows it down. And it does actually take a long time until you're in the first proper dungeon in this game. I guess you could consider the Forsaken Fortress to be the first dungeon, although it feels more comparable with sneaking past the guards or getting through the Deku Fortress in Majora's Mask. I would say that the first proper dungeon in this game is actually the Dragon Roost Cavern, and it is a long time until you're in it. It seems as though the Wind Waker was meant to free up the player in terms of exploration. You've got this large ocean that you can explore to your heart's content. You can go wherever you want. It almost seems very much like Breath of the Wild, but it's not until quite far into the game, because until then it has quite a strict linear structure. Coming off of Zelda from the N64, maybe they could have made these improvements. The Wind Waker only really did that in terms of visuals. I mean, that's why I think of Breath of the Wild as being a return to form. It made that kind of breakthrough. Yep, just one hit on that bird. There goes that enemy. But then it's just rinse and repeat, kind of King Dodongo levels of difficulty really. And there wasn't any amazing opening cutscene to the boss. There wasn't anything interesting or dramatic to the opening of the boss battle. And you can Z-target these. I think it would have been a lot better had these not been targetable. It might not seem so obvious that this is something you can interact with your boomerang, and it might have required some kind of exploration or just studying the environment, seeing what you can do with the boomerang. But they've actually made it so that you can Z-target it, which just makes it so clear, like really spelt out. And then there's this ridiculous location here that completely breaks the fourth wall. I don't know what to make of it really. Palace of Figurines, Nintendo Gallery. Yeah, this has always gone like really horribly for me. And why did they add this in? Like what? Is this really fun? I mean, it's something I guess that they can add to their main quest. They didn't add a third dungeon after all. It looks nice, it definitely looks nice, and I like the music. It's just a shame about how easy it is. But just the way that you get the fire arrow anyway in Ocarina of Time is made really memorable by that cool riddle on Lake Hylia. When water fills the lake, shoot for the morning light. And then you get the ice arrow by going through the Gerudo training grounds. In this game you just warp to a fairy location and you're just given them. Like an NPC basically just hands you to them. Just not as great basically. And I gotta say, like, I don't like the fact that this boss has no tie to the rest of the dungeon. Maybe the fact that you use the hookshot to defeat it is something that ties it to the dungeon, but the boss arena comprises of sand, and there was nothing that set up the use of sand in the dungeon. Like, the dungeon has been all about plant life and wind, and then you get this boss who has nothing to do with that. It might not be that important to most people, but I really liked it how in previous Zelda games they did kind of stick to a theme in the dungeon. The boss actually felt properly connected and coherent within the dungeon. In terms of how the boss actually is, again, I love the music, but I think it's pretty simple in terms of how it plays. Very, very easy to use the hook shot. It's very easy to grapple it, and then it's just hack and slash, and I don't think there's a lot to it. But the main idea added to this game is a parry system where you press A at the right moment. It's really easy to do, the animations on enemies are very clear to see, and it pretty much turns it into a quick time event. It's not hard at all, and that is pretty much it for any of the enemies. This is the first enemy encounter, and it is just hack and slash. That's all it is. No difficulty to it at all. And this world can be full of people who just ask us to collect winged feathers and the joy pendants and stuff. Like, you know, that's not compelling side content, is it? Just like characters asking us to collect specific items. I don't imagine anything any of these people have to say is interesting whatsoever. There's this postal mini game, I guess. I've played it before, it's not really that great, it's just a generic mini game. Why are they having us do this? I guess we'll be doing some of this later on, but it's kind of insulting, isn't it? If I were you, I'd try to use my shield to deflect the monster's blows and see if I could make it drop its weapon. If you did that, you could pick it up its weapon with A. So just giving us the answer. I didn't know what she was going to tell me when I pressed A there, and it turns out that she just tells me the answer to completing the game, which Just goes to show its easy difficulty level, doesn't it? And so this is straight out of Ocarina of Time, just lighting these torches with these sticks. Straight out of the first dungeon in Ocarina of Time. Just redoing it all over again. A standard puzzle, transferring fire among burning torches to get a key to open the door. And also it's throwing in very generic puzzles as if we hadn't played Ocarina of Time already, just like moving around blocks. Very standard stuff. I mean, if anything, this is looking a lot less expressive and atmospheric than the first dungeon in Majora's Mask. Obviously, this is very similar to that time in Majora's Mask in the first dungeon, where you explore into a room that's very dark, and you've got to light things up with torches and stuff. But it's kind of a lot less dark than it was in Majora's Mask, a lot less spooky, and a lot less distinctively dark. Not to mention that it's just entirely the same thing, just lighting torches. I mean, it was already beginning to feel a bit stale, like the same thing over and over again in Majora's Mask, but in this game they do it yet again, rather than coming up with new ideas. Oh, and we're given a hint. You would be wise to change your perspective and see what is around you. It is important to get a firm grasp of your surroundings and see what you can use to swing the battle in your favour. So we're just like flat out given a hint. I didn't even want to press that. I accidentally pressed A when that came up. And also, like, you would press A because like it could be something very important. Like, usually getting the dungeon map requires some exploration into the dungeon, maybe solving quite a few puzzles until we get the dungeon map. But here, it's so kind of bare bones that we get the dungeon map just in the first room. It doesn't exactly suggest a dungeon that's like filled and packed with content if we get the dungeon map straight away like that. And also throwing bombs around. I don't want to sound too whiny, but it is as though, like, once you're in a new dungeon, you can expect entirely new mechanics, puzzles that are entirely unique to the dungeon, rather than just repeating ideas that were used previously. Yet here we are using bombs again. It's not too bad. I mean, all of these ideas making use of the Deku Leaf, they're kind of neat, like vaguely kind of fun, but really not sensational. It's not really amounting to any kind of moment that feels like very memorable and special. And now it's reusing this again. I thought this was the stuff of Dragon Roost Cavern. It's just being repeated for this dungeon. You want distinct dungeons that have completely different mechanics and ideas. It just goes to show how easy those enemies are. I think that's the whole point of this room, to get past those two enemies to the other side. Yet it was so easy. Just those two enemies and that was it. Are you ready? If that is the case, then we must search for the cave around the backside where Jabun is said to hide. It's not exactly well hidden. It's just around here. Like, this is actually it. Just here. Some more cutscenes and long lines of dialogue, I guess, as opposed to proper gameplay, no dungeon content. Oh, this. My Christ. Mighty fine boat you got there, bub. I mean, how crass can you get? How just wacky and loony and stupid. I think there is something we can do with this gate actually to improve it. Maybe something to do with the Gorons, but I really can't be bothered to actually do it. Such a stupid side quest. Here's one of these Koroks with a tree stump. What are we to do? If we are not able to nurse these trees to health, the forest will never spread, and the great Deku tree will slowly wither and die. Swordsman, could you go to the forest haven and get some of the water that flows around the Deku tree? Please, please help me. I'm not going to be doing that. It's stupid. It's such a stupid fetch quest of a side quest. It's so silly. And again, very generic kind of simple puzzles, just placing statues on top of switches. Like, I mean, come on. It's not really adding up to a compelling kind of experience right now. Even the King of Red Lions is snoring or yawning. It feels a bit silly, doesn't it? It's not amazing gameplay. In fact, it wasn't until Twilight Princess that they did something quite significant with it, which was with the Dominion Rod, which is kind of basically the same idea as this, but done a whole lot better. It's done a lot more smoothly and intuitively. There's no need for the command melody. There's no wind for you to conduct. Oh, you want me to play it on here? Cool puzzle. Really interesting. Just playing a song. It's a very, very easy temple so far. Not too eventful. I mean, I guess this statue thing is supposed to be interesting. If they had the Dominion Rod, maybe that would have been more impressive. And I think we're making our way to the boss already. How much have I been enjoying it? I haven't really been enjoying it that much. It really is kind of like a moderate Zelda experience. It's moderately pleasurable. It's just not amazing. It's got some moments that are better than others, but it is feeling quite lackluster. It's not outright bad. And maybe some parts are pretty bad, but mainly it's just a bit mediocre. It's just a bit underwhelming as a Zelda game. Basically a lesser effort from the Zelda team. I mean, look at Link's face. Like, he looks gobsmacked, right? I guess it's meant to just be cute, but I don't know, it actually feels sarcastic. It feels like the designers put that in because they knew that it's just rubbish, that it's just trite, primary, standard kind of fantasy fare. There isn't a whole lot of imagination put into this. It's just really young children's book material. You know, sometimes I wonder whether, like, they intended to work on the game for 3 years, but when they realised that because of the end credits, they wouldn't actually be able to work on the game more because there wasn't enough storage space, that they reduced development time to just 2 years. Let's go to the dungeon then, all the way on the other side of the world. Imagine if we didn't have the warp song. Imagine that. Imagine that there must have been players who always avoided that tornado and would have spent the rest of this game just sailing for hours upon hours in between places. So here's the redesigned Stalfos, another skeletal enemy. Looks quite a bit different, I guess. Maybe similar to the Stalfos enemy that was in Majora's Mask, inside a kind of castle. Pretty easy. And that's it. Well, I think there's another one. But that's just the general thing. That's what it takes to defeat the creature. So they placed a second one because that was so easy. And a third. But that's not exactly like... Jesus, that didn't even get to reform itself. We faced plenty of those Dark Nuts anyway. There are going to be a lot more during the Savage Labyrinth and stuff. And even before then. Is there any excitement about this boss? Well, since I know what the boss is, I can say that I don't have any excitement. They can try and make the boss room door look as thorny as possible with all of those spikes, but I know what the boss is and I know that it's not a ferocious boss. It's not intimidating. It's just a really weak, whimsical, buffoonish boss. Not scary, not challenging. More like something out of Mario rather than Zelda. You can already hear it. This. It is something straight out of Mario. In fact, this looks like it's plucked out of Luigi's Mansion, if anything. That's pretty much what it is, isn't it? It's just some fat, clownish creature. It's straight out of Mario. It's just simple, use your mirror shield on him, and that doesn't even reach me, but I can get him. There's no second stage either. It's just the same thing. It's like rinse and repeat. And that's it, isn't it? That is actually it. Like, really late into the game too. You know, this is one of the late dungeons in the game. You would have thought one of the more challenging dungeons. It wasn't challenging at all. And now we've got to get through more cutscenes. Like, really tedious kind of cutscenes. I'll remain here and continue to pray. You must hurry. The stone that blocks the entrance seems extremely heavy. The only way you could move it, Link, is if you were to become as heavy as the great Deku Tree himself. So just giving us the answer. Looks like there's a treasure chest there, but that's probably just a joy pendant. Something that should just be side content if you want it, like the stray fairies in Majora's Mask, but something that actually does become part of the main quest. You actually are required to collect them, to collect all of the Triforce shards. They're actually hitting each other. That's how easy this game is. The enemies actually destroy each other. It's amusing when they hit each other, but it's just completely lacking in challenge. And this just takes a lot of time. I mean, we already know how to solve it. We know what to do. We know what's going to happen. We can already picture it in our head. And just walking over there with these iron boots, it's just really slow. I think there was something I tried to do in a previous playthrough to try and speed it up, and then I was horrified to see this here, something that requires you to bring Makar along so you can play the song with him. This is such a bland room, isn't it? Look at the red. Is this game meant to be like a really colourful kind of game? And you can remember the red carpet in Ocarina of Time. The red really stuck out. I mean, maybe there's meant to be this idea that Ganondorf is a kind of realistic figure in an otherwise colourful world, like he pretty much was in Ocarina of Time. Maybe in this game they're thinking, oh, Ganon's castle isn't quite as colourful as other areas in the Wind Waker because Ganondorf is threatening the land. He's kind of soaking up the colour and making it uncolourful, but I think the rest of the castle is actually colourful. Just this part isn't really. And the whole room looks a bit basic and doesn't look all that great actually. Looks a bit crummy. The music is Ganon's theme. Doesn't exactly have any of the intensity that it did in Ocarina of Time as you're going up the tower. Yeah, and it's just like a basic kind of stairway, not a spiral stairway or anything. It is just like 3 sets of generic stairs. It just doesn't feel anywhere near as special as it did in Ocarina of Time. Not to mention that it's just repeating it, but just not doing as good a job of it either. Just lessening the experience. I don't know if the Zelda series has quite matched that moment of intensity in Ocarina of Time when Ganondorf transforms into Ganon. It's a really powerful moment. Maybe some parts in Majora's Mask did, but certainly not in the Wind Waker. Like when Ganondorf transforms into Puppet Ganon, it just looks like a farce. It just looks like something that's completely not serious. It's this big, bloated, stupid creature that moves in a really naff kind of way. Possibly it's meant to be similar to the first incarnations of Majora's Mask. The third incarnation is a bit better. It's a bit more ferocious, but it still looks pretty stupid with its eyes rolling about, and it's definitely not as difficult as the final incarnation of Majora's Mask. Give Hyrule to me. And then this happens, and it's so stupid. The king just comes along and he touches it first. He just comes out of nowhere. Like Ganondorf is just like stood there are you ready? I'll aim for you, and you use your shield. Do you get it? Is this it? Oh my god, this is it! Oh Jesus. Just stab him in the head. That's it. And then it plays rolling credits, I think for the first time for a Zelda game. Actually, I don't know about the original Zelda, but A Link to the Past had credits which showed you different places across the overworld, places that you've explored and done fun things. Ocarina of Time did that too, as did Majora's Mask, and it makes a lot of sense, especially for Ocarina of Time. I know a lot of people got a bit teary-eyed when they came across the end credits, and it showed all of these locations that they had explored throughout Hyrule. With this game, just rolling credits and these bubbles featuring the faces of different characters, lots and lots of different characters, some of which I haven't actually met in this playthrough, and it repeats the characters' faces. Like there are... In the end credits for previous Zelda games, it never ran out of things to show during the end credits, like all of the different locations and characters and everything. In this game, it doesn't even show the locations. It's just so low on content, it has to repeat itself even in these credits. I've seen that Eskimo guy now about 4 times already. It's got that same character, the Rito bird guy, like 3 times in the same screen. 4 times. There he is again. The game is very reliant on cutesy visuals, cutesy elements. To me, the cute factor is very cheap. It's not like I want photorealism and blood and guts and stuff. I definitely don't want that for Zelda. I'm not interested in it. I love the Studio Ghibli films. I think Princess Mononoke and Spirited Away are great, but those films actually do feel like they were crafted by an experted, skillful artist and visionary. Not just crass, wacky, loony, cutesy designs. And there's Tingle. Goodness, did you feel my telepathy? That's why you saved me, isn't it? Isn't it? Isn't it? Jesus Christ. I mean, this is exactly like Jar Jar Binks. It's the same kind of vibe. Like someone who's so confident. Like it's like an act where the people who've made it think he's so funny in all of these zany, wacky ways. Like all of those wacky sound effects, the stupid dialogue, repeating himself. But with anyone with just an ounce of artistic taste, is probably going to view him as just a travesty, just a rubbish, stupid character that no one likes. I mean, maybe some people like him. Maybe some people like Jar Jar Binks. We've released him. I mean, you have to. He could have been side content. He probably should have been side content. And there are some things, like you can go in between these to get some rupees, I think. It's not exactly very rewarding. It's a bit menial. I can't even be bothered to collect that one. I think there's something over here. But anything it's bound to be just isn't very considerable. It does basically feel like a waste of time. There are some weather effects on the sea sometimes, but otherwise it does look pretty much the same all across the overworld. Just this blue sea. And it looks pretty nice, but, you know, too much of anything and it gets a bit boring. And here we get the Wind Waker, which is like a rip-off of the Ocarina, basically. It's just, I mean, it's kind of nice that they went for something other than an Ocarina, but it's actually worse than the Ocarina because it takes a lot longer to play these songs. On the Ocarina, you see speedrunners playing on the Ocarina, or just any normal player playing Ocarina of Time, and you can do it pretty fast. But in the Wind Waker, it just takes that bit longer to play these songs. I also don't like the synthesized vocals that appear either. It just feels a bit kind of fake, like obviously synthesized and silly. And these songs aren't particularly good, are they? And actually, I think they're repeating the sound effect from Ocarina of Time that was in Dodongo's Cavern 2. There's just a bit of drums in the soundtrack. And not much else. If you've only got 5 proper, fully fledged dungeons, you'd hope that they will be full of character and distinction. But in this dungeon, it has a soundtrack that isn't really anything noteworthy. Kind of feels like a shame. And I kind of hate these choo-choo enemies. I think they were in A Link to the Past, and I didn't like them there, especially when they were electrified. They just felt really annoying, like irritating. They weren't fun in any way. And it's also annoying to wait for these bokoblin enemies to kind of get off the ground. It's very easy for them to tumble over, and you can't hit them again until a specific time after they've got up. Even after they've got up, it takes a while until you can hit them again. Okay, so standard choo-choo enemies. They take 2 hits now. You gotta wait for them to come up. Yep, just barely any gameplay at all. I can put the controller down. Yeah, so you're just not allowed to explore anywhere other than where you're being led. The first major dungeon item in the game. And this is a problem of the Wind Waker, really. Like, they could have made a puzzle of this with the layout of the dungeon. I noticed this branch early on, like when I came through this door, I actually did bother looking left and I noticed this. And basically I could have left that in the back of my mind and I might have later thought, oh, I remember that branch from before. Maybe that was something I could now use with the grappling hook. But instead the game just leads you back there. It just holds your hand and does all of the working out for you. So you don't need to explore, you don't need to figure things out for yourself. The game just leads you in the right direction. It just holds your hand the entire way and there's no thought process. I think this is the central area of the dungeon, but there's not much exploration required. You are basically led along a very forced kind of route. They've basically reversed the order of the first two dungeons, this dungeon being like the inside of the Deku Tree, and then here you have this kind of opening leading to the bottom of the dungeon, and it's straight out of Ocarina of Time, yet the setup just doesn't feel the same. I think in every previous playthrough I didn't even notice this, because I felt like I was being led along a very specific route, not left to wonder about the surroundings and what I might have to do to solve things, and it just doesn't introduce it. You don't enter this room from the bottom, and it's important to establish these things early on, so that things feel like they're coming full circle when they eventually do get solved. And it's meant to be a puzzle. That's the point about the structure of these level designs. But in this case, it's just not a puzzle. It's basically something that's just playing itself out. And also, I'll say about the structure of this dungeon, the inside of the Great Deku Tree was made distinctive by the way it was actually set inside a tree. So it had a circular structure and you went up inside the tree. And there are some parts where it did stretch out into like corridors and rooms and stuff, but not too much. But if it did majorly kind of stretch out, it was actually below the tree. In this, it doesn't really feel like a tree at all. The walls are made of bark again, but so far, apart from this room, it's felt like a series of corridors, like room after room after room. It's just something that makes it seem like just another dungeon, basically. You know, not distinct enough from the setup of other dungeons. It feels quite normal. And here we go. Like, so, I mean, you know, obviously you'll get the idea to cut all of these threads, and the game just essentially plays itself out. No thought required. I mean, it might be that you just didn't notice that little bit below at all. Okay, so it's called Woods. So I guess it's meant to be more than one tree that we go inside. Unlike the Great Deku Tree, it's meant to be a series of trees. But what are we inside when we go in between trees? Is that not made of bark? Or is it meant to be like a forest area, a wooden area? But if you actually look outside it, it does seem to be just one giant tree. But inside it doesn't feel like that. I've been so negative of this game so far, like really kind of just moaning about it and stuff. I wasn't like this when I first played the game. Like, I just got on with it and didn't really say much of anything. I mean, I don't think that's saying much. But, you know, it still is quite early on in the game. But then again, there's not a lot later on in the game. There aren't a whole lot of adult dungeons, so to speak. Yep, sailing. Oh, it's raining. It's interesting. Be good when we get the warp song. Like ordinarily when you go between locations, you know, there'll be some variation in the environment. But with this, no. Is that one of those reef islands? Is that another one too? Like some of the most boring islands you'll ever come across. There's so many of them. So this island was meant to have a dungeon apparently, but it doesn't. It just doesn't. So they kind of scrapped it, or they didn't have enough time to add one, or they couldn't add one because of lack of storage space, who knows. The cave where he hides is sealed with a mighty stone slab that repels all who try to pass it. I mean, that's all this island was. We were brought to this island just to be told that, not exactly feeling like a top tier Zelda game. And now it plays the cursed theme. I guess it's meant to be giving some sense of urgency, like things are really kicking into gear, but it doesn't exactly feel like that. And I forgot just how linear this part of the game was. It's really just pushing us along in a specific direction, like really tying us down. There's so much sailing again. You know, look at all of the distance we have to cover now. We were just at Great Fish Isle or something, and now we're going to go past that place and travel twice the distance. So we've returned to Outset Island. I mean, that is pretty ridiculous, like spending all of that time at sea. It replenishes all of your life energy and magic power. Your attack power also doubles. And your kind old grandmother filled your bottle so full that there's 2 helpings inside. Yep, so that just lowers the difficulty level even more. I'm not actually sure if anything takes off more than 1 heart in this game, let alone 2 hearts. Like in Ocarina of Time, I think the most powerful move against you is by Ganondorf, which takes off 5 hearts. Other enemies like Volvagia take off a lot of damage, and the Eye Knuckle takes off a lot of health. Is this going to be a dungeon? No. We'll just talk to a giant fish, a wacky giant fish, and collect a pearl that we then got to like put on different islands. And that's going to involve more sailing. It's so silly. I've marked the places where you must set the pearls on the sea chart. Yeah, so more sailing around, my god. And there's going to be even more later on. We know what's coming after all of the dungeons are complete, but right now it's almost as though there's just as much. The wind deity Cyclops uses those cyclones to fly across the sea instantaneously, but if you had that power you wouldn't have to spend so much time sailing back and forth across the sea all the time. Wouldn't that be nice, Fry? It definitely would, yeah. And I think over there is a fairy island. Just a little dot of an island that contains the simplest of puzzles. Yep. Is that really a puzzle? We just used a bomb on that wood. And this counts for a whole grid in the overworld. This island counts for an entire grid in the overworld. It's just a place where you put a stone. That's all it is. Okay, this is one of the boats in the game. Looks exactly like the interior of that place where you swing between the ropes. God, it's so easy. Oh, he did punch me there. Oof, didn't even mean to do that. So all you did was just fight 3 moblins. Like that's what the overworld contains. And another one of these. You can just use a bomb on it. And what will this give us? You can now carry 99 bombs. Like, I've barely done anything. Okay, last Triangle Island. Looks identical to the others. Another Chew enemy, but it's electrified. It's not challenging, it's not interesting, you have to wait so much. Oh yeah, and I think this is the first Dark Nut. Is it exciting? I mean, it's the return of the Dark Nut. I mean, maybe you could consider a Nine Knuckle to be like a Dark Nut, really. None of the challenges you got from the original 2D Zelda game. It's just a quick time event. It's just pressing A at the right moment, which is very easy to do, and then just hack and slash. It's buffoonish. I mean, it's just stupid. It's just a farce. It's a joke of a Zelda game. There's nothing to it. What's new about this? Isn't this just the same as it was before? And they haven't done anything new with the arrows so far. So that's to get the boss key. Just a flat out repeated puzzle. It wasn't exciting before, it wasn't exciting this time. As if we need more fairies. Especially with this boss. Maybe more arrows, although actually not, because it gives us arrows. That kind of like suggests it's very low difficulty level, doesn't it? And this boss is a complete rip-off of Bongo Bongo, like so blatant. I guess you do chuck a bomb into its mouth, which is kind of like King Dodongo, or those earlier enemies, to be honest. And the music at least is really good. I don't know whether Bongo Bongo was such a difficult boss in Ocarina of Time. Maybe for some people it might have been. But with this boss, the hands move so slowly compared to Bongo Bongo's. It's just not nearly as difficult. And that's it. There's no second stage. That is actually it. And that's meant to be a test. That's meant to test that you're the real hero or whatever. Like, there's no sense of satisfaction. Like, just 2 years before they released Majora's Mask, and that was a game that gave a sufficient amount of challenge. And then they create this, where it's just so stupidly easy. The item you seek is hidden somewhere in this castle. To find it, you must find the entrance to the basement. But that entrance has been blocked by a mighty threshold, firmly sealed to prevent evil from ever gaining access. Do you know where to search and what you must do to open the hidden way? You will find a clue in the shape of the herald near where we arrived at the castle. So just not letting us kind of figure things out for ourselves. And this is so simple. This is literally like a childlike play toy. The kind of, in quotes, puzzle that a child would complete with some kind of toy you'd find in a waiting area at the dentist's or at the doctor's. It's just so pointless and meaningless and just silly. I mean, it's something, I guess. But if anything, if you're going to have a very special moment, sometimes if the atmosphere does actually feel really special, sometimes you don't need a puzzle. Like in the Temple of Time of Ocarina of Time, there's no puzzle there. You played the Song of Time, and all you had to do was just walk forward and pick up the Master Sword. And it's a great moment. Like, a lot of people loved it. It didn't need any kind of stupid puzzle, like interrupting the experience. I mean, maybe you'd say that it's kind of welcome nonetheless, but I don't really think so. Excellent, Link. To perceive such a puzzle and decipher it is no small feat. Yes, it is. You're kidding. And this is probably the worst in terms of the very whimsical, wacky, crude, crass elements. Both the design on the Deku Tree, but also these forest creatures, the Koroks. I mean, just look at this. If it didn't look crude enough in Ocarina of Time, this design just goes all out wacky with some kind of goblin-esque appearance. I mean, how can you not cringe at this kind of stuff? It's so... How can you argue that The Wind Waker isn't for 5-year-old children when it comes to a sequence like this? There's just no redeeming factor. It's just lazy, stupid design. It's just... Oh god. And now here comes one of the worst parts of the game. One of the stupidest, wackiest, crummiest parts of the game by far. Just such Looney Tunes nonsense. This whole ceremony, this whole affair, all of this, it's so stupid. Oh, don't play this song, please. I hope you enjoy it. Oh, And what are they thinking? Great Deku Tree, this year you have once again produced some splendid seeds. Right, okay, well that's over with now, so we can get out of this place. Almost 50 grids, and this is the kind of content you'll find in each of the grids, and not much inside it. But this is the Eastern Triangle Island, and there's nothing more to it than just having put that pearl upon it. Okay, in terms of this location, this apparently is meant to count as a mini dungeon. So mini dungeons in Ocarina of Time were stuff like the Ice Cavern, the bottom of the well, and the Gerudo training grounds. A mini dungeon in the Wind Waker is this volcano, and it is pretty neat how we get to freeze the volcano using the ice arrows. But that's just the way of opening it. Then I guess you got to get inside it, and we'll see how difficult that is. It doesn't look as though it's being difficult at all. It's pretty straightforward. Okay, there's a place that you got to sidle. Maybe you could use the leaf, but I'm not sure if... Probably take longer to redirect the wind. Like, this isn't difficult at all. You're just like climbing up it basically. That bird isn't even attacking us. And so we get inside. And so this is meant to count as a mini dungeon. So first of all, there are some fire keys. Well, fair enough. I got hit by the lava. Can go right past the fire keys if anything, and then some of these insects all the way from the first dungeon that you can so easily take out with the A parry system, and then that's it. This treasure chest spawns and that's it, and then we could go back outside again. I guess we use this using the power bracelets, and it's not anywhere near as epic as Adult Link lifting up the huge pillar of stone in Ocarina of Time. He just simply picks it up as though it's no fuss. There's nothing epic about it. I mean, it kind of goes to show just how bare this game is. All of these fairy islands look the same. I mean, it's like a whole new island and everything, but... Oh wait, we've been to this one. I mean, again, it's just a large fetch quest, isn't it? Like, we get to the dungeon entrance and the fish just tells us where to go to get an item. So we're just like doing all of this sailing again, fetching these items that we need to get into these places or whatever it is. And it's just... So this is meant to be another kind of mini dungeon. I mean, I guess technically it is a mini dungeon. It's just a really underwhelming mini dungeon because it barely has much in the way of gameplay content. Is this it? I think this is it. Are you finished? Is that it? Oh, that's too bad. Oh, it's even longer than I thought. There's even more like kind of going to and from places. The Wind Waker isn't a good Zelda game. Like, it's cute. It's lovable. The graphics are good. But, I mean, it's just like a heavily padded out, it's ridiculously easy, and it's low on new ideas. It was just all too keen on repeating ideas. It's almost as though this is meant to be the most interesting part of the game. We got through the equivalent of the child dungeons, and now we're supposed to be tackling what's meant to be the equivalent of the adult dungeons. Yet we're doing this. It almost kind of feels like Beneath the Well and Majora's Mask. Just going between places, collecting things for these different people. So now we've got a companion in a dungeon, and I've got to say I don't like it. The worst thing about it is having to take control of the companion by playing the command melody again and again and again. That alone just makes it feel absolutely rubbish. The fact that it takes longer to play songs with the Wind Waker makes it all the worse. So this is meant to be like the equivalent of like the statue in the Spirit Temple. So again, the command melody. And why do you have to play this again? Like, this was never fun. It's not fun to play these songs. To get through all of this, it's just like a cutscene. So we have to get Medley, which involves using the stupid song. So they have us play that again. I don't know why. Did they think it was such an amazing puzzle idea or something? Oh, this room, my god. You can tell you're just going to be using the command melody again and again and again. But like, you know, this is straight out of the Spirit Temple in Ocarina of Time. Like, completely the same idea when you reflect light multiple times towards the face of that statue. And it doesn't even look better. You know, this statue, if that's what it is, this face, the whole setup of it, it doesn't actually look better than the design in Ocarina of Time. I actually prefer the look of the designs in the Spirit Temple because they were just a whole lot less plain and boring and just blunt and lifeless. There was actually a feeling about the Spirit Temple, and that statue was like a whole lot more interesting than these designs. These designs just look so crude and flat and boring. You know, like how when you carry things around the house, like if you have to carry things downstairs, like things to be washed, you try and carry as much of it as you can in one go, just to try and prevent yourself from having to go up and down the stairs as much as possible. And so it's kind of the same with the command melody. You want to reduce the number of times you have to do it as much as possible. So, you know, in that sense, it very much does feel like a chore. And maybe to some extent, video games can be like chores, but then it's just a matter of whether or not it's worth it. Like whether there's some kind of payoff that makes it all memorable and entertaining. Because we know what's going to happen here. We know exactly what we're doing. Certainly if you've played Ocarina of Time already, but even if you haven't, you probably know what's going to happen. It's basically the same thing that we did in that earlier room, but now with all of these mirrors reflecting the light, and it's exactly the same kind of face with the eyes on it. Does it look great? It's a sunny face. Purple rupee. That's just great. That's just great. I don't know if there's a sequence in this game where you do blow up a chain reaction of bombs. That was probably the best part of Dodongo's Cavern. I don't know if this game does something like that, or does it as well. It's this weird thing where they repeat a puzzle idea from Ocarina of Time, but they don't actually make it play out in a way that's as interesting. I think I dropped the game during the Triforce Fetch quest when I was playing it for the first time, but I did come back to it and eventually complete it. But on my second playthrough, I didn't bother with the game when it came to the Triforce Fetch quest. I just didn't care to see the ending of the game that much. Is it really requiring us to plant seeds in these places? Do they think that that's such an amazing idea that we would enjoy so much? It looks like we're doing it though. Yep, that was it. That was a puzzle. More enemies from other dungeons. I know that dungeons in other Zelda games do kind of include general enemies and everything, but I think it was a lot less than this. Here's the mini-boss of this dungeon, and I gotta say, it's pretty pathetic. It's just blatant padding. The actual mini-boss is another Wizrobe. It's like a variation on this game's Wizrobe, and the whole idea about it is that it spawns all of the same enemies we've already faced. Great, so let's get the Wind Waker out. Command melody again. Right, go there. Now I've got to get the Wind Waker out and play this for you. I've got to play all of this. I've got to remember how this goes. I do kind of feel like a dad on a trip with his children, like a visit to the zoo or a visit to a theme park, and trying to arrange stuff and trying to like handle like buying food at a restaurant, you know, taking them to the toilets, like taking them to lots of different places. I feel like, you know, like a babysitter almost, or something like that, with this stupid companion coming along. More dark nuts. Are you kidding me? And that's it. And there's not much more that the dungeon does. Do I need to take Makar up here with me though? That's what I'm really worried about. Oh, now I need Makar to like make stuff on here. So I need to play the command melody again. So it's not like I can get him to plant all of the seeds in one go. Because I think it's an area where you can fall down below. I mean, this is exactly the same as the previous room, by the way. There's nothing new to this, except for the fact that it's more annoying due to those purple bubble enemies. And what brilliant puzzle idea or mechanic have they used to open this last door, to open this wind turbine more? Just this. Just another generic kind of switch puzzle. And then this room where you get a key, it just has you face several of the Amos Knight enemies that you already faced back in the Tower of the Gods. It's just not coming up with anything new. It's not really feeling unique to a different dungeon. It's all over the place. It's not the high standard of design that Ocarina of Time had. Like possibly some dungeons in Ocarina of Time faced you against enemies that you'd faced before. And if it did, like those torch slug enemies, I'll notice it and think that it's a bit lackluster. But it still does come up with new ideas a whole lot more generally than the Wind Waker. So here we go, the game padding itself out even more inside dungeons, just having us face all the same enemies again. More of these enemies, Bokoblin enemies again. No challenge at all, just hack and slash material. Just waiting for them to get up so we can hit them again. And these... At this point, I'm actually wanting this dungeon to be over. I'm not being impressed by its ideas. It's not fun to play, it doesn't feel rewarding. Oh god, they had to place that kind of purple hand there, just to like warp him away or whatever, just possibly making it potentially more annoying. I really do get tired of these enemies. And I know that once this is completed, all else there is in the game is the long Triforce Fetch quest, you know, with the Savage Labyrinth, the Ghost Ship, just pitting you against all of the same enemies again and again, wave after wave, a very small minor mini dungeon in the form of Beneath the Cabana House, maybe some other areas that will involve all the same enemies again and again, and then Ganon's Castle, which is basically a boss rush. I also feel that a very important thing about a Zelda game is how it comes to feel at the end. The sense that a Zelda game gets better and better as it goes on, especially in between the last few dungeons. You really feel like the developers were going for it, making the game as good as it possibly can be, not holding back on the content, but doubling down on the sense of adventure, the awe-inspiring puzzle solving, and brilliant expressive atmosphere. And then here comes this part. Link, you must search for all the Triforce shards so that we can head back to Hyrule without delay. Great. Yeah, this is probably one of the worst parts in the game, actually. That news. That you got to collect all the Triforce shards. At least in your second playthrough. Maybe in your first playthrough you wouldn't know what to expect. But in every playthrough after, this is really bad news. So I stopped playing this for a while to play Link's Awakening on the Switch. I really enjoyed that game, by the way. I really took to it very well. I don't even know where to begin, actually. I'll try and persevere with it. I'll make a good attempt, but my Christ. The amount of sailing, the amount of talking to the fish, it's so stupid. But playing the Wind Waker again, it's making me see just how lackluster this game really is. But why? Was it really that Eiji Aonuma just didn't care to make a great Zelda game? Maybe the stress of Majora's Mask just took its toll. He didn't want to handle something like that again, so he just took a break with the Wind Waker and didn't push himself further. Or maybe it was the producers telling him just to make a really easy, accessible game. You can see it on the GameCube, just the look of the GameCube console and how toy-like it appears. A toy for very young children, and the loading screen of the GameCube, and it looks as though that's what they were trying to do with the Wind Waker, and it's what they did. But it's really unfortunate. And I forgot about Tingle too, all the rupees and stuff. I need to find all of the children before I can get the Cabana House deed from that stupid teacher. So I do have to do this. This is part of the main quest. My dear, that's a joy pendant, blah 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 blah. Oh, this game. I want to use my sword to stab her in the head. Oh god, I'm not feeling this, to be honest. Isn't there like a save file that I can play instead? I'll try to load up another save file. Okay, so I'm just loading up another save file. I don't want to do the Triforce fetch quest, and I'm here. I guess I've defeated Phantom Ganon. And these are all the Triforce locations. So glad I didn't have to go through the Savage Labyrinth and all of what's required to get into the ghost ship. Shame that I can't play Puppet Ganon though. I do want to see if like the other save file, I think it's different. Oh, it must be random. It must be randomly generated then. But that's terrible. That makes it even worse. That means you can't even follow an online guide. But you look at the bottom of the well in Ocarina of Time and it's a whole lot more fully fledged. Like it is a mini dungeon, but it feels like a much more significant area. Yeah, look how bare and basic this looks. It just looks so trash. Like it looks so bare and hollow. It's such a measly environment. They really didn't work on it. Okay, that's that. That's all it is. Like some measly rats, some re-deads straight out of Ocarina of Time but looking different. Just a very measly looking environment. A lot of effort was put into making the graphics engine good, but the content just fails it. So what am I doing playing this game? I just want to evaluate it. If I'm not actually enjoying the game, you might say, well, don't play it then. But I gotta say, I do enjoy evaluating it, especially in light of the other Zelda games. These end credits take up over half the space of the disc. To what extent is it really worth it? How great are these end credits really? And the music's good. I like the music, but I mean, it is a bit lame, right? It is a bit. There's just not much to it. All of this waving, it's a bit. It's not so great, is it? And them appearing too. Just two sages. And then there's this parallel to the beginning of the game where Link leaves Outset Island. I don't know where they're heading off to exactly. The world's thoroughly explored by this point. It had to be because of the Triforce quest. I know this is a very lovable, cutesy kind of game that's difficult to hate for a lot of people. I certainly don't hate it. It's definitely head and shoulders above most action-adventure games. I just feel like it falls a bit flat compared to A Link to the Past, Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask, that it doesn't quite reach the same heights. Nintendo were really on a roll with those games.